This is the ROG Ally. We have published a few videos featuring this device, but today we are going to review it. I spent about 3 weeks with it, and at this point in time, there are a lot of things to highlight, and there are also a lot of changes that were done since the day that I first got the ROG Ally. There are firmware updates, BIOS updates, software updates that change how the ROG Ally works. As of the time of recording this video, 12th of June 2023, we are running on BIOS version 317, Armoury Crate SE version 1.2.4.0. And the most notable change is that the silent power profile is now at 10 watts instead of the original 9 watts when it was initially launched. From what I know, there are many more changes that are coming to the ROG Ally, so there might be some aspects in this video that might be invalidated in the coming future. So let's get started with the review. Let's start with the overall looks of the ROG Ally. I have to say, this design is very minimalist and it has a tinge of gaming aesthetics on it. For example, there are lines at the grips, and at the back there are also little dots to further improve the grip, and that is especially useful for sweaty gamers like me. Personally, I'm not a fan of the white color here. Don't get me wrong, it does look good, but it does get dirty easily. For example, my Xbox controller that is white in color has stains around the grip area, and that is because my sweaty fingers will create stains on the controller grip, and I can foresee that happening on the ROG Ally as well. The overall controller layout is like taking an Xbox controller and slicing it in half and then gluing a screen in between. Honestly, this offset joystick design is just superior compared to the Steam Deck's symmetrical joystick layout. I do feel like the Ally's button position are also perfect as it works for smaller hands or larger hands. These joysticks are also very smooth and it almost feels frictionless. But what I don't like though is the RGB joysticks. I do think that they need to have RGB somewhere because this is an ROG product after all, and we can easily disable it as shown in our video where we showcase the Armoury Crate SE software. Some might say that not having touchpads on the Ally is a bad thing, but I disagree. Those touchpads are only used in certain situations, and let's be honest here, we are buying this kind of device to play games, not to navigate around web pages or windows or anything like that. We do have 4 more buttons on the ROG Ally around this side here, so 2 of those are for the Xbox controller buttons and 2 more of them are special buttons. One of it is to launch the Armoury Crate SE overlay, and you can also hold the button to bring up this menu. The other one is to launch the Armoury Crate SE itself, and you can also hold the button to show a list of map buttons, which is handy if you are confused by how you want to navigate Windows using the joystick and the trigger buttons. Moreover, there are 2 pedals at the back that are easily pressed too. The pedals accommodates how you want to press it actually. So you want to press it from the side or the top, then you can, because the pedal just works that way. I do wish that the pedals were a bit larger and also a bit softer so that they are even easier to press. All the buttons on the Ally are also programmable via the Armoury Crate SE software, so please do watch that video, link in the description as well. I also need to highlight that the pedal buttons at the back also have even more functionalities as well. Essentially, they work as the FN key on your keyboard. By default, they will do all of these functionalities, and I usually just use the task manager, screenshot, and screen recording functionalities. It's really handy and also easy to use. The shoulder buttons are also nicely designed. They have a very rough texture, and that makes it very easy for me to rest my fingers on it without worrying that my fingers will slip off if I want to press it. While we are at the top, we should also take a look at the ports available. We have an audio jack, a micro SD card slot, the XG mobile connector that you can also just use the USB Type-C portion of it for charging or data transfers, the volume rocker, indicator LEDs for battery status and activity, and also a power button that doubles as the fingerprint scanner. The screen is also rather huge here. We got a 7-inch IPS LCD screen with an LED backlight that has a standard resolution of 1080p, 16:9 in aspect ratio, and it also goes up to 120Hz refresh rate. This is a display that I think is adequate enough for a gaming handheld device like this. Our particular unit covers around 93% of sRGB and goes up to around 500 nits of maximum brightness. And that means you might have a problem using the Ally outdoors during bright sunny days, but I don't think you'll be doing that anyway. We'll revisit this point later. The speakers on the Ally are positioned nicely right beside where my hands will be when I'm playing a game. They sound absolutely amazing. Have an audio sample here.
Of course, the life is well. Kid does what he has to do.
Now it's time to talk about the performance. I'm going to quickly go through the specs here. Our particular unit is the top of the line variant with the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme processor, integrated graphics that is based on RDNA 3, 16 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM at 6400 mega transfers per second, alongside with 512 gigs of NVMe SSD, and everything is powered by a 40 watt-hour battery. I'm going to talk about the performance from a different angle here. I'm going to focus on the things that I personally want to play on the Ally. Firstly, emulation. Tears of the Kingdom running on Yuzu emulator. With the default settings, it's not gonna be a good experience, honestly. I can't even get 30 FPS consistently on the default render resolution with zero graphical enhancement mods. The soundtrack is what kept me hooked on this game. And I also tried a lot of indie games on this Ally. For example, Ahead in Time works fantastically well and I had a great time. I actually completed this game twice before. And then Bastion is also a game that looks amazing, and though everything looks like it's a bit too tiny for this ROG Ally. And then I tried Oxenfree. This game had been on my games to play list for a very long time, and I just thought it would be a perfect time to actually play this game on the Ally. Now, this game, as you can see here, looks simple enough. It's a slow-paced 2D game where we walk around, tap on dialogue choices while we mess around with the radio. I thought, hey, since this game is such a simple game, I can play it using the lowest power profile, right? This was before the firmware update, so 9 watts should still be fully sufficient for this kind of game, right? Turns out, no. I was getting a lot of stutters, and also the audio was glitching to the point where it just starts having cackling noises. I thought this was an aesthetic choice by the game designers, but no, it's genuinely because 9 watts isn't enough for the Ally to run this game properly. I then tried Oxenfree again after the latest firmware update, and now we have 10 watts option instead of 9 watts. Remember, for a portable handheld gaming device like this, every watt matters. But unfortunately, even at 10 watts, it is still not enough for the Ally to run Oxenfree properly, and I had to bump it up to 15 watts so that this game wouldn't glitch out the audio.
I'd been out of school, and the timing had just never worked out, so...
What? Does that make you to her then? Hey, second cousin?
He's my stepbrother.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that was even a thing.
However, for games like Vampire Survivors, they do actually work well with the 10 watt power profile. I mean, I had a great time and there were no visual or audio glitches for Vampire Survivors. Genshin Impact is another game that I tried on the Ally. On turbo mode, I can run it at the highest graphical settings and get about 40 FPS in the new desert area. But if we play using the lowest graphical settings, then we can even get 60 FPS while on battery. And this is where I want to talk about the problems that I encountered with the ROG Ally. There are a lot of problems, honestly. Firstly, the battery life. That 40 watt-hour battery on the ROG Ally is just insufficient. Genshin Impact at turbo mode on battery lasts less than an hour. Yeah, I barely had time to finish my daily commissions, spend all my raisins, and Oxenfree, that indie game that I played at 15 watts power profile, The battery life is at about an hour or so, and that's it. I even did battery life benchmarks too. This is how long the Ally will last in each power profile locked at 100 nits of brightness. It is absolutely atrocious, and I should reveal one more piece of data. These tests were done at 120Hz refresh rate. One might think that decreasing it to 60Hz might make the battery last longer, right? Well, I redid the benchmark once again, and surprisingly, no. The battery life is essentially the same. No idea what's happening here. It could be that the benchmark has some limitation in terms of its refresh rate, or the refresh rate just doesn't matter in this case. Either way, because of the bad battery life, I brought the Nintendo Switch to Taipei for Computex instead of the ROG Ally. The charger is also something that I want to mention here. It's a 65-watt charger that is actually from their laptops. I'm not sure why ROG gave us this instead of the ROG phone's charger that is much more compact and also has a detachable cable. I mean, this charger works, it's just not that ideal. Either way, I ended up not using the included charger and use our Ugreen GAN chargers instead because it works the same way as the original charger, and it also has more ports to charge other things at the same time. The second drawback is the operating system. Yes, Windows 11 is the problem here. Well, it's more like a double-edged sword, honestly. On one hand, Windows 11 allows us to play a vast library of games on the Ally. Just install it and bam, it's running. You want emulators? There are a lot of them to choose from as well. But Windows 11 isn't made for handheld gaming devices like this. It's literally your standard touchscreen Windows laptop, but crammed into a 7-inch display. Navigation is quite horrendous actually, especially if you want to tinker around or download some stuff using the ROG Ally. Also, Windows 11 is just too heavy for a handheld gaming device like this. There are lots of background services and telemetry services alongside with bloatware in Windows itself that is going to absolutely tank your battery life and also defeats the purpose of being a portable handheld gaming device. At least ROG didn't include McAfee in the Ally. I have to give credit to ROG here because the Armoury Crate SE software is absolutely crucial to the Ally's experience. It gathers all of the games into one single launcher that you can just launch it from there, and you can also customize the profiles for each game. But we've talked about all that in another video. Just remember to watch that video, link in the description. The Armoury Crate SE is still rather buggy, but when it works really well. Though I want to question, why are there two different software updaters? We can update the Armoury Crate SE itself through the Armoury Crate SE software, but when it comes to drivers and BIOS updates, we have to go back to the My ASUS app that is just not optimized for the ROG Ally. Why can't everything be just integrated to the Armoury Crate SE? I wonder. If Windows isn't the best for the ROG Ally, then what other choices do we have? Well, Linux comes into my mind, but if we want to switch over to Linux though, things will be even more horrible because they don't have the Armoury Crate SE software, and it will be essentially just like a Linux laptop but runs in a different form factor. Does it actually improve the battery life though? That is something that we'll discuss in a future video. So please do subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that. We'll also be testing a modified lightweight version of Windows 11 on the Ally and see how much it actually affects the battery life and performance, so do subscribe for that as well. All in all, I do think that the ROG Ally is like a first-gen device. There are lots of aspects of this device that needs a bit more polishing and improvement, particularly on software and especially on the battery. I also feel like the ROG Ally is rushed to the market as there are still many changes done via software updates and BIOS updates. Honestly speaking, I spent more time tinkering with the Ally than actually playing games on it. And as for the price, it's USD $700. For the Malaysian local pricing, I can't reveal it yet. I do know the price already, but it's under embargo. All I can say is that the price is rather enticing. Either way, I think that the ROG Ally will sell like hotcakes regardless of the price. People are hungry for such devices. And will I actually ditch my Nintendo Switch for the Ally? Maybe not. I do think that both of them can coexist because there are lots of exclusive games that are only available on the Switch and it's not available on any other platforms. And also, the battery life on the Switch is much better despite its hardware being 8 years old at this point. Yeah, the Tegra X1 was launched in 2015. And that's it. That's all we have to share with you about the ROG Ally. Remember, we are not done with this device yet. There will be at least 1 or 2 more videos about the Ally, and we'll see you guys there.